I work so hard to make it known that I am for the girls. Like, I have the nails, I do fun, fruity femme makeup, I have the literal trans flag on my eyes right now. You think this is for a man? Never. So, I don't know what else to do, but from a trans lesbian, happy pride. And I promise, I'm fruity.
Why is it that those who benefit from inaccurate representations get to define what good representation is? Quite simply, that is because those who have the power to define culture through the production of movies, books, music, and fashion are those who are unlikely to be a part of minority groups. During the rise of Hollywood, most wealth was owned by white people. Ergo, those who had the money to make films were white, and thus their ideas, their beliefs, and their personal tastes were presented to the wider public through a medium that was easily shareable. Even if there was a large audience of black people who found the depiction of their race as being only in roles of servitude and villainy wrong, they had no money to fund alternative, accurate portrayals, and thus no ability to create representation that reflected their lives and experiences. Now, one would think that the days where blackface and similarly one-dimensional and offensive portrayals of minorities was over, but by pretending that heterosexual men can be lesbians, what you get is games like Mighty Jill-Off, which is described as starring a submissive named Jill who has a boot fetish and is forced to climb up a tower after her queen kicks her down it as punishment. The game's BDSM and lesbian themes were implemented by Entropy, a BDSM practitioner, for the purpose of providing legitimate dykes in video games. He also made the game difficult to fit in with its BDSM theme. Anna Anthropy, the developer and designer, is a trans-identified male. So what does he know of the lesbian experience besides what he's watched in porn? Jesse Gender's upcoming short film is another example of this false representation.
So yeah, I've made, and it's coming out in 2 weeks, June 25th. So last Tuesday of the month. I made a sci-fi thriller movie called Identities, Identitieaze. Just to say, I've been talking about the film itself, but we worked with, the crew was all mainly queer, non-binary, trans, LGBTQ folks and women. There's a group in Los Angeles called Women in Film, and they have a sort of accreditation that is if you have over 50% women and non-binary people working on the film, which we got, which is something that we're really proud of. And that doesn't even count like trans folks or like trans men and queer folks. So like the cast and crew is all like outside of John Delancey is the only cis white dude in the whole cast, and he's playing a villain. So I feel like that fits.
In a broader sense, what most men think of what they hear lesbian is going to be a porn genre and a fantasy. The actual reality, being women of a variety of appearances and backgrounds, is never reflected. Continually, those who know the least about minority groups and benefit the most from the perpetuation of falsehoods and stereotypes are the ones who get to control public perception through representation. Representation refers to the examples used to define a group. When the only examples of a group tend to be those who have reached a certain level of fame, the way that they achieve that fame is highly instrumental to the stereotypes and ideas attached to that group. If the only examples you have of a group are negative, then those stereotypes will not only impact how the wider public views them, but also how the group views themselves. As noted in Psychology Today, a lack of media representation negatively impacts self-esteem and overall views of racial or cultural groups. Scholars and community leaders have declared mottos like how it's hard to be what you can't see, asserting that people from marginalized groups do not pursue career or academic opportunities when they are not exposed to such possibilities. For example, when women, and women of color specifically, don't see themselves represented in STEM fields, they may internalize that such careers are not made for them. When people of color don't see themselves in the arts or in government positions, they likely learn similar messages too. A lack of inclusion in media creates a sense of otherness, and negative representation is often internalized, but this is nothing new. The doll experiments hosted by Kenneth and Mamie Clark, who were instrumental in proving the harm of the separate but equal concept of segregated education, found that they ascribed positive characteristics to the white dolls, but negative characteristics to the black ones. Then, upon being asked to describe the doll that looked the most like them, some of the children became emotionally upset at having to identify with the doll that they had rejected.
Black doll? And which one is the white doll?
That
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because he's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
A later study, which chose to observe children and to determine their natural playtime with dolls of various races, without experimenter prompting, found that the girls rarely chose the black dolls during play. On the rare occasions that the girls chose the black dolls, they mistreated them. One time a black girl put the doll in a pot and pretended to cook the doll. That's not something that the girls did with the girls that weren't black. When it came time to do either of the black doll's hair, the girls would pretend to be hairstylists and say, "I can't do that doll's hair, it's too big," or "it's too curly." But they did the hair for the dolls of other ethnicities. While they preferred to style the Latina doll's straight hair, they were also happy to style the slightly crimped hair of the white doll as well. The children were more likely to step over or even step on the black dolls to get to other toys, but that didn't happen with the other dolls. In the cases of minorities that are without obvious or easily acceptable communities, inaccurate representation can lead to identity issues, further separating members of a group from one another.
Let me walk you through the basics of deconstructing genital preference. Step 1 is recognizing that just because you're not attracted to something doesn't mean that it's unchangeable or that it's not rooted in bias. Someone who's only attracted to Eurocentric features isn't just built that way. So if you recognize that you might have bias about this topic, we can deconstruct it. Question 1, are you gendering the genitals? You'd call someone transphobic if they said that a trans woman had a male body. What's the difference between that and saying that they have male body parts? Are you thinking about specific acts that are maybe making you feel gross? You're imagining doing it to a cis person? Did you know that the size, texture, smell, taste changes on hormones? It's not the same experience as with a cis person. How would you feel if you dated a trans person that said, "I do not want you to touch that area at all"? Are you grossed out just by the idea of your partner having those genitals? Some food for thought. Let me know if you have other questions.
For example, the lie that lesbians love strap-ons, or that there has to be specific sex acts for lesbian sex to count, can lead lesbians who have not been sexually active to think that something is wrong with them in particular. In reality, the depiction of lesbians in media often doesn't reflect what lesbians find attractive, how we date, or have sex. Additionally, the lack of positive representation, except in the case of sexualization, is a driving factor in the high number of lesbians who seek the transition, as they find pretending to be a heterosexual male an easier alternative. Now, one might think that the solution to this issue is to merely make accurate representation by involving a diverse population in all aspects of production. However, this is typically not the case, or worse, leads to representation that skews the other way, and places a group of people on a pedestal. Most notably is the promotion of creators with sought-after identity traits to production-level jobs, despite not having the skills or background to support this choice. In turn, this ignores older minorities in these fields who may have been overlooked in the past, but who have the ability and experience to pull off diverse stories, in favor of people who score well on identity politics. This can be seen very well in the clumsy introduction of very special characters to various forms of media. Forced diversity in white glove handling not only makes minority characters stand out and garners a negative reaction, especially as their existence is tied to a lack of good storytelling or production, but in general just is a bad idea. This can be most obviously seen in a few highly popular franchises. One such example can be seen in Star Trek, which began in the 1960s when Lucille Ball was instrumental in getting Gene Roddenberry's concept approved at NBC. He described it as a space western, but insisted on using the story to deliver moral messages, similar to Gulliver's Travels. Although the initial series was cut short after only 3 seasons, since its initial airing in 1966, Star Trek has spawned 11 spin-off series and various film franchises, and has gained an immense number of fans. Now, Star Wars is a space opera, which began in 1977 and currently has 9 films in the franchise, 6 of which were overseen by George Lucas, and the last 3 being under the control of Disney after Lucas's sale to the conglomerate. There are several TV shows, both live action and cartoon, as well as several standalone films. Similarly to Star Trek, Star Wars has a huge following and is one of the most financially successful franchises of all time. There's little reason to compare the two, beyond a shared genre, a shared word, and both having large fandoms, but the desire to compare continues. And now, today, they both share a degradation in quality. But why exactly is that? Well, first we have to discuss what made Star Trek so great. One of the simplest answers is that Star Trek was insistent on delivering a message and tackling contemporary issues, but often, not always, had writers with the skill to deliver it without delving into lecturing or preaching. A film doesn't have to be deep to be enjoyable. The popularity of monster flicks and Marvel movies can attest to that. However, popcorn films do not tend to retain fandoms. They do not have legacies. They do not inspire for generations to come. At the time of the original series airing, television was still greatly controlled by the network, and while several episodes were censored on airing, such as in the UK on the BBC, most of the controversial liberal messaging went unnoticed due to the science fiction elements. As Gene Roddenberry noted, by creating a new world of new rules, I can make statements about sex, religion, Vietnam, politics, and intercontinental missiles. Indeed, we did make them on Star Trek. We were sending messages, and fortunately, they all got by the network. If you talked about purple people on a far-off planet, they, the television network, never really caught on. They were more concerned about cleavage. They would actually send a sensor down to the set to measure a woman's cleavage to make sure too much of her breast wasn't showing. In addition to capitalizing on the distraction provided by scantily clad women, the writers for Star Trek were able to discuss contemporary topics like race, the Vietnam War, and birth control by embedding those messages into a story taking place hundreds of years in the future and on alien planets. While not every story was incredible, and in fact many are downright campy, and not in a good way, there are enough good and outstanding episodes that the legacy of the original series has been embedded in popular culture. Additionally, the inclusion of the efforts of several science fiction writers allowed for many concepts that were quite highbrow and intelligent, a stark difference to modern shows and movies which often pander to the lowest common denominator and don't trust the audience to pick up on subtle aspects of the story. Star Trek has, in turn, greatly influenced the real world. Martin Cooper, the inventor of the first cell phone as we know it today, was inspired by Star Trek. NASA named its first space shuttle after the Enterprise. Martin Luther King Jr. watched the show, and when Nichelle Nichols thought of quitting, he told her that Star Trek was the only show that he and his wife Coretta would allow their 3 little children to stay up and watch. This was one of the first shows with truly interracial casting, and after the series, Nichols worked for NASA to bring the first people of color into the U.S. space program. Culturally, Star Trek is the progenitor of the slash genre, led to the rise of the first fanzines and fanfiction collections, and inspired later space set franchises such as Star Wars and Firefly. In the time between Star Trek's original series and today, though, modern television has changed a lot.
They, not she. I've never felt like a she or a her, so I would prefer they or them from now on.
Okay.
And I've never told anyone but Gray.
Instead of introducing storylines of more diverse casts naturally, or commenting on problems through metaphors and analogies, what we get is lecturing. You can see it in media from
Meet. Yes, the meat. I promise I can help him get home and then you'll never see me again.
You're assuming he as a pronoun.
True. Yes, sorry, good point. Are you he or she or they?
My chosen pronoun is the definite article. I am always the me.
Oh, I do that.
Transformers.
Ooh, I like your pins. I am Nightshade. My pronouns are they, them.
Can you switch,
Nightshade's pronouns are they, them.
He or she just doesn't fit who I am.
I'll kill you! David!
And Grey's Anatomy, among many more.
Is my mom okay?
Oh, she's stable. We'll know more soon. Let's make sure you have no other injuries.
Snowmobiling was her idea. So it's pushing me to face my fears. She was right. It was a lot of fun. God, why is she always right?
I know how you feel.
I mean, fun until she swerved to miss a tree and flipped us 5 times.
Hey, we should get a CT angio to determine the location of her vascular injuries.
There.
Excuse me?
Their injury, not her. I'm a they. I'm genderqueer. Non-binary.
Got it. Thank you for letting us know your pronouns.
Their preferred pronouns are they and them.
Okay, yes. Well, all right then. Well, let's get you... All?
You is fine.
Great. Well, your ultrasound is fine. Let's get you up to CT.
Especially Grey's Anatomy, which can never have been accused of impartiality, but at least made an effort to be realistic in its approach and to not demonize people when disagreeing. Compare scenes from earlier seasons, for example, where the father of a trans-identified female patient did not agree with her choice for a mastectomy, but still was concerned over her health and safety, to modern seasons, where a clearly female patient insists on using they-them pronouns, leaving Dr. Weber, an older surgeon and one of the first black surgeons at the hospital, on the hook for being unable to understand what it is at its heart, which is an idiotically misogynistic sentiment. It's everywhere, and it's inescapable. Instead of increasing understanding of minority groups or acceptance, these examples of so-called representation, many of which are inaccurately labeled or presented inaccurately anyway, only further divides and instigates tension. From the lesbian porn that leads many to think lesbian sex is just a performance for male approval, to the constant depiction of homosexual and bisexual people as being the same as the heterosexual queer population, representation matters. It's necessary and can enact positive change, but can also do just as much harm if done wrong. And it's been done wrong very often in recent years. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I thought of this, well, I feel like I touched on a lot of these topics many times, but that's because there's so much you can always say, and I try to keep these videos not 5 hours long. But I tend to rewatch Grey's Anatomy quite often. I really love the original series. The first, I'd say 10 seasons are very comforting to me. I love how many storylines there are. There's quite a few that are very explicitly feminist. I really love how they deal with Christina and her desire to not have children and the question of, can you have it all? They have so many great things, but then as I watch them in a binge watch, no breaks between them, towards the end you get so many trans episodes, and they're not even well done. They're not something that I can kind of ignore. In the beginning, they had an intersex character. Actually, several people have intersex disorders, and those were done in a way that didn't feel like I was being preached to. And then in the later seasons, I got to an episode where one of the interns is treating a injured person, an injured woman, and Dr. Weber, an older person, an older doctor, is there with her. And the injured woman is, I use they, them pronouns. And so the intern goes, thank you for trusting us with this. And they present Dr. Weber as being this bad guy in the situation. And it got on my nerves so much that I just couldn't finish watching past that, because I know that there's more of this nonsense coming up. So not only does that mean I can't enjoy the show anymore because I'm getting preached to, but it's not even preached to in an interesting way. It's not even, I can watch things that I don't agree with politically if you can give it to me in a manner which I'm not being hit over the head with it. And I feel like a huge issue here is that a lot of the people who are now in charge of our entertainment just don't have the talent to weave stories that can hide these messages in a way that allows you to be entertained, or to at least ignore the things you don't like. But I digress. This is why I just end up watching true crime and super long video game reviews on YouTube instead of having a Netflix subscription. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can leave them in the comment section down below. Shout out to the subscriber who suggested this topic, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!